This is Self-Care-ish, a podcast where we talk about divorce, dating, choosing not to date, and saying yes to the things you've been scared to indulge in and no in a way that won't get you ostracized by society. The goal for this series is to defy some of the social stigmas and hurdles people face when they make a bold decision, whether it's to leave a relationship, quit a job, or even being brave enough to tell friends and family no when you're at capacity and you need time for you. And who am I? I'm Megan Lonergan. I've been a columnist and copywriter for over a decade, and I'm also a newly separated co-parent. And if there's one thing I love more than anything, it's meeting people where they're at. And where you're at is probably busy, most likely multitasking while you're listening to this. So with no further ado, it's time to get self-care-ish. I know every podcast starts with ads, but this week I say screw that because I want to ask something else of you. If you have enjoyed this pod so far or found value or solace in its sometimes very neurotic sentences, then all I ask is that you share us. You don't have to click anything, buy anything, or say anything. But if you share it along to someone else who might be going through a divorce or a breakup, or even just navigating the choppy waters of the over 30s dating world, flick them an episode. It might help them. It may bond you guys closer together, but it definitely goes a long way to helping me keep the pod going. All right, enough of that. Welcome back to Self-Care-ish, where prioritization and other people's well-being go together like a fussy toddler and a sleep-deprived parent trying to assemble an IKEA table. There's frustration, there's tears, and sometimes there's a strong urge to give up halfway through. But we persevere here because we all know that good stuff is on the other side. And I'm really happy to do this episode because it is coming off the back of a few heavy weeks, I know. We've covered emotional affairs, we've covered PMDD, we've covered the impact of technology on our relationships, and also the truly toxic love advice our generation absorbed from the mainstream media we consumed in our early 20s. It's been a lot, but it's very much reflected the things my friends and I have been talking about lately. But I think it's time we upped the serotonin because we know life isn't all bad stuff. And sometimes when you're going through a divorce or a breakup, I know it can feel that way for months, years even. But life is more like the mixtapes you and I would make as moody teenagers. It's a little bit of Marilyn Manson, shouldered by a side of Ricky Martin and Britney Spears. Sometimes you're living La Vida Loca. Sometimes it's the dope show. Sometimes you run. Sometimes you hide. So I'm taking some time today to just riff with you, just hang out, mano a mano, and talk about the lessons I've collected after officially 12 months separated. Because my ex-husband and I recently signed the papers and filed for divorce. And if you've ever done that, you know what an emotional roller coaster it is. Even going to Officeworks to print out the papers, because no one has a printer anymore, it feels like an enormous undertaking. And I can see why some people break up but never officially file their paperwork to get divorced. And it's not that it's overly confusing. Well, it kind of is. There's a lot of legalese. But it's just, it can make you feel pulled backwards into the vortex of a more difficult place after you've spent so much time and effort and money plowing forward in the face of uncertainty. And, you know, one of the first things someone says when they're about to break up is some version of, but I'm scared. Like, what will my future look like? And then, ironically, when it's time to sign the paperwork on a breakup, it's scary to look backwards, to see and reflect on where you were at, which probably wasn't even a great place. Otherwise, you never would have broken up at all. So it's forwards, backwards, trying to control the future, trying to run from the past. I'm just going to get my Jay Shetty on right now and say, yes, clearly the present is where it's truly at. So, as a very self-proclaimed doyen of divorce, for the purposes of this episode at least, I'm here to muse on the good things you learn about yourself during separation, or the very practical things I learned, which I hope in turn help you. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's start with being a bit of a goal digger. Goal, Goal. Because something I did in lockdown to stay relatively sane was journaling. And I'm not talking, dear diary, today was a good day. I made a brisket to eat my feelings of financial insecurity. No. My lockdown journaling was strategic and also very, very lame and embarrassing. Because I remember the general feeling I had around the end of my marriage was this dull, aching sense of hopelessness around the future. I couldn't see a path forward and get aligned with that path. So after a few months of lockdown malaise, I started getting really heavily into positivity, like manifestation, Brendan Burchard, Catherine Zenkina, Zig Ziglar. Like, my coping mechanism for the crushing weight of the pandemic was to become a massive goal digger. Emphasis on goal. But I'm also not one of those people who can have big, fat, audacious, hairy goals like be the president of the universe. I have found that I like to work incrementally, because every time I achieve a goal, it proves to my often very doubtful subconscious that goals can be achieved. So then I keep going. So at the time, every day I was writing down how I wanted my life to be. And I recently pulled those journals back out because I've kept them all, mostly just to lol at myself every now and then, because God help the person who goes through my stuff after I die. But I was blown away at how simplistic my goals were. Like, every day I was, oh my God, this is so lame. But I was writing things like, Dear Universe, thank you for my nice clean apartment that is my own. Thank you for the great school my son gets to go to. Thank you for the community of awesome girlfriends I have around me. Thank you for the nice normal car I get to drive. Because at the time I drove a diesel Hilux truck that sounded like it was about to explode like something out of a Michael Bay movie every time I turned it on. So that was that. It's lame, I know. But the pandemic was going on 3 years ago. And I'm happy to say I achieved all those things. And having those very embarrassing journals of goals proves to me the value of architecting your life. Even the basics, like what type of reasonably priced Japanese car you drive. So yeah, architecting your life, especially in the face of a breakup. But even in a relationship too, because you're likely to date again. So if you're listening to this and you're in a relationship, I have a theory. Well, this is pretty obvious, but I know it's important to discuss your goals as a couple, because people always say things like, oh, they grew apart. But I think the lack of fun chats about where you're heading as a couple plays a huge part in growing together. So if one of you wants to live in a nice, clean apartment and one of you wants to live in a van, you are going to run into trouble. I'm going to go on the record and say the problem with my previous relationship was that I was doing this activity solo. And something I want to carry into my next relationship is to be super intentional together. Like, discuss where I want to go, where they want to go, how we can go to each place together, side by side. Because, like, fuck, I know it seems so simple saying it out loud now, but let me ask you, when did you last spend a Sunday having a wine with your partner and just riffing on what you've got going on that week? What friendships you each want to see and nurture, and what you'd like to achieve in a year? Like, That is the kind of shit that gets me hot under the collar these days. And I am not sitting here being like I'm a fucking type A person. I've just learned the hard way that not practicing this and not being intentional with your relationship can be the worst thing you can do for your relationship. Or even just not being intentional with yourself. Like, if you're not intentional, then it makes sense that everything that happens to you in your life is unintentional. Oof, that was good, Megan. No. But what I'm saying is going through my old journals and seeing how putting those little incremental goals on paper seeped into my brain to the point where I just tick them off by nature. And that proves to me the value of this kind of stuff. Now I have bigger goals than getting a better car, but they are in my current journal and I can't share them with you until they get achieved. All right, this neatly segs into my next sort of tip, I guess. And it's something I've loved putting into action. And it is the concept of extreme ownership. It is the idea that everything that happens to you in life, good and bad, is your responsibility. Caveat before you come for me. Within reason, obviously. It's a concept that comes from a former Navy SEAL turned business coach, Jocko Willink. So his whole shtick is, say, picture this. You are on a top secret Navy SEAL mission, and whatever goes down, the squad leader takes ownership of it. Even if one of your fellow SEALs messes up and accidentally orders a pizza instead of calling for backup, it's the leader's job to fix it and make sure that pizza never gets ordered ever again. Jocko's stance is basically that us normies can apply this kind of mindset to our everyday lives. Yes, even if you're dealing with a struggling staff member or a relationship on the rocks, it is on us /you/me to figure out how to lead that staff member effectively or fix that relationship or end that relationship in a way that feels amicable or as amicable as possible. You are the Navy SEAL squad leader in your life. So when something good happens, you get to puff out your chest and proudly proclaim, "Oh, I did that." You're the captain of your ship. You steer it towards victory. But when something bad goes down, you have to strap on your responsibility cape and declare, "Oh, I did that." Because you got yourself into that mess, it means you can get yourself out of it. Now, I know you're wondering, but Megan, how does this extreme ownership thing relate to my separation? Because when you're facing the very, very daunting task of uprooting a family, finding an apartment in the middle of a housing crisis, and juggling all the chaos that goes along with it, it can feel a little bit like you're in a war zone. Okay, maybe not a literal war, obviously. Real war, way worse on the scale of things that are not good. But your body doesn't know the difference between the pain of a real war zone or a terrible breakup. It just registers pain. And actually, in my episode on navigating the 3 stages of your divorce, shameless plug, I talk about how you need to get through those first few months with the kind of diplomacy that would make Obama proud. I mean, we're talking ninja level negotiation skills, because you're going to be dodging bullets of paperwork, sorting out bank accounts, sometimes splitting companies, and mastering the art of co-parenting schedules like a true boss. And I know this is really easy for me to say all of this, because even I have not been the most extreme ownership-y person on the planet. Like, offloading blame to other people is so tempting. Saying, it wasn't me, or I did this because they did X, so I did Y. Like, I know that is more seductive than a packet of Tim Tams and a season of The Office to binge on. It's easy to get sucked in. And yeah, I have listened to Jocko's book multiple times to actually bring me back down to earth and take ownership of my situations, because it is easy to get off track. It is tough, but it is not war zone tough, people. Actually, speaking of war, the final thing I want to discuss is the concept of the war chest. It's my favorite thing. And if you get a whine into me, I will likely rant to you about how much this approach to saving money changed my life. I don't know how the word war became so prevalent in my very Bernie Sanders loving, Greenpeace donating, lefty pinko life, but it has. And maybe it's because it feels so removed from my life that it had an impact. Thank God, obviously. Touch wood. Maybe it's because the business cult that taught me this strategy was very capitalistic. And not to knock capitalism. We all love stuff, but that's a whole other episode. But here's how the war chest goes. Okay, you, me, everyone has a savings account. But do you have a war chest? You need to think of yourself as a country with maybe some fucked up values, but still a country that has like Russia on its doorstep, the wolves at its heels. You need a war chest, not a rainy day fund. That's child's play. Screw that. The war chest means business. And here's how it works. Whenever you get given any money, whether it's $50 or $50,000, your war chest is the first thing that gets paid. Everyone has their own allocation for their war chest. For me, whenever I get paid, half of everything goes into it. After that, the remaining goes into debt, rent, groceries, cocktails with my girlfriends, heroin, you know the deal. And that's kind of a ruthless approach. You customize it to whatever works for you, but make sure your war chest gets paid first. And I promise you, you will be amazed how quickly you save money. I don't know what freaky deaky Jedi magic goes on with this approach, but all I know is treating your savings like life or death as soon as you get paid any money is the fastest way to save. I know for some people listening, you're just like, yeah, Megan, that is a savings account. But you will be stunned how many people just pull their money into a single account and just pay bills from that willy-nilly. I know that because I used to do that. And I know it's the same thing, but mentally it is so different. And I say all this because you can tell, I'm clearly very emotionally attached to my war chest. But I'm a solopreneur. I'm a single mom. So cash flow, king, right? But also when I went through my separation, having that cash there to split between my ex and I, it made it so much easier on the both of us to feel free to pay the bond on a new place or just feel a sense of empowerment to go off on our own. And I know money is not fun to talk about, but you know what is fun? Feeling free. That is fucking amazing. So give that a try. If you like, hit up your bank, open a separate account, give it an overly dramatic, intense name like War Chest or Nuclear Bomb Strategy Fund, but preferably something that won't get you investigated by the government, and start feeding it with the next batch of cash that lands into your account. All right, this one is starting to get long. I hope at least one of these tips and tricks has got you pondering your goals, your savings, or even how to handle awkward conversations with your ex. Because yeah, sometimes self-care doesn't come in the form of an LED facial. More often than not, it's just about making healthy decisions for yourself. Ugh, I'm so deep today. I know. But if you want to have your say on anything I've discussed on this episode, leave me a voice note at selfcare-ish.com.au. selfcare-ish.com.au. Because I love getting your comments on each app. You guys smashed my DMs last week and I even got a voice note, so that came through. Thank you. It made me very happy. I'll play it right now. And I'll see you next week.
Hey Megan, I loved your podcast today. I was having a bit of a listen and definitely something that I have discussed being single and also in my relationship of 2 years currently. I definitely think the social media kind of platform brings in a whole new set of questions in relationships and also when you're dating and when you're first meeting somebody. So thanks for this one. It was a great listen.